This podcast is brought to you by Kiwi Design, the leader in MetaQuest and VR accessories. And now you can deck out your device while supporting the podcast. The MetaQuest 2 is a great headset, but do you ever feel things could be a bit more comfortable? Well, we have the solution for you. With lens protectors, controller grips, face covers, head straps, link cables, headset stands, and more, including my two personal favorites, the top version controller grips with added weight and an extended handle, and the Kiwi upgraded Elite strap. Let's be real, we've all whacked our controller. Don't be the guy messaging Oculus support for your own mistake or waiting weeks for an out-of-stock controller. Visit the link in our show notes to prepare yourself today. After visiting the link in our show notes, make sure to use the promo code Ruff Talk VR at checkout, all one word, to take full advantage of your savings. And make sure to click the link in our show notes so the podcast gets credit and you help support us. Remember, whatever you need, Kiwi has you covered. Hey, welcome to this episode of Ruff Talk VR. Today we're joined with another guest that has me stoked.
Dude, every week, every single week that we interview somebody, I'm like, oh, this one really excites me. And then I know we got the next one coming, and I'm like, this one excites me too.
Yeah, we're going to sound like a broken record on our last interview the other week with Amanda Watson, the creator of Airlink. We're like, oh, we're so excited for this one.
Yeah.
And now today we're saying we're so excited for this one, but that's because it's genuinely a great guest. And today we have the founder and the CEO of what we call ForeVR.
ForeVR, yeah.
What they say is Forever Games.
They claim it's forever. We've always
it's spelled
butchered it to ForeVR.
Yeah, it's capital FORE, capital VR. So we always say ForeVR, but I understand it is Forever Games.
Yes.
And today we have the founder and CEO, Marcus Segal, joining us today. So we're so excited for this one. So Marcus, can you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are? And, they've probably played your games already on the MetaQuest store, but do you mind telling them a little bit about your studio as well in case they've managed to not play them yet?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. I'm a fan of the podcast, and I think it's great that you've been here pretty much from the beginning, just letting people know and being that vital, hey, I don't want to buy this unless I'm going to love it. And I think you guys have definitely saved me some money. And so I appreciate you very much, and getting invited onto the podcast is really cool. The whole studio was jazzed about it. So yeah, what we do at ForeVR Games. So basically, going back in the Wayback Machine, it's July, it's 2020, we're all locked down. I'm spending way too much time in VR. And I get this idea that what VR needs is, it kind of needed in my view, it needed kind of a Wii Sports moment. Like, it needed games that had zero nausea, that had a lot of replayability, and that were the kind of games where, you could put your mom or your dad in the headset and they would say, oh, wow, this is amazing. And so that's what we decided to do, that we would basically create Wii Sports in VR. And so, we basically made, bowling, darts, cornhole, and pools so far. And we wanted to connect people in play. And so that was kind of the genesis, was this idea of kind of creating the games that would really open up accessibility to VR to as many people as possible. So like my dad's 83, his grandson, my nephew lives on the other side of the country in Kentucky, and they could meet up and go bowling on the moon during the pandemic. And I thought that's about as good as it gets.
I love to hear that, especially that Wii Sports comparison, because I've definitely gotten that vibe the entire time I've played, ForeVR games, or forever. Yeah.
Hey, you call it ForeVR if you want to. Either way, as long as the players search ForeVR, then they'll see our games, and I'm happy.
So it sounds like when it was kind of conceptualized, you went into it with a vision of hitting all these, kind of niche sports, instead of kind of going in just
one and done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I really love is that I've connected them all together. So if you're bowling and you're playing with a group and it's like, hey, let's go play pool, if you go back to the lobby, there's a portal and you could go with your party to the other games. And so the idea of, now the M word, the metaverse word, is kind of out of favor. But if you think about a sporting metaverse or a casual sports metaverse, or of connected games, then we seek to be the kind of casual sports metaverse. But that definition of that word is really like sketch. And I think that's because a lot of game makers have not been particularly thoughtful. Like if you think about it, we have the generational opportunity, and I say we, like consumers, by voting with our dollars, by our members of the media, like you guys, and what we promote and love, to create a metaverse that 100 years from now they look back at this time and they say, "Wow, those people did a good job of creating something great."
Yeah, really laying the foundation is what you all are really doing. And, I love the small touches that you see in every 4VR game, like the meta avatar integration.
That one was huge.
Yeah, that's something I know not everybody loves them, but I love the meta avatars. When I load in, I see your fancy guy, I see my guy.
Yeah.
You see all the meta avatar NPCs around, and then there's that classic 4VR menu feel and just general aesthetic. I love that typical 4VR vibe that you have in all the games. So is the vision with 4VR just to keep knocking off these niche sports? Or do you want to expand to more big ones like, soccer, baseball, or, stay focused on these niche ones like cornhole and darts?
It's an interesting time in VR, where everything has kind of been delayed, and now it's starting to kind of come out. So Sony shipped its headset, Apple maybe has a headset imminently. We're kind of in this hurry up and wait mode, right? And so as a small developer, we have to look at what's happening in the market and evaluate our strategy. So we couldn't keep making sports games, but I don't know that that's gonna put bread on the table. So I think we're looking at what we're seeing in the market. There's some incredible game makers out there and experience creators. Like I look at what the Gorilla Tag guys did, and I'm a big fan of Gym Class, and they create a many more opportunities for socializing between players and friends. So our games are a little bit less that way. You show up with your friends and you bowl. I'm not, showing up with my friends and then giving one of them a haircut. You know what I mean? So we're basically looking at everything that's happening in the market all the time and evaluating our approach to product and our approach to the market. So I think that there will be our games will always have kind of friendly competition in them, but I can't say that I would build, badminton or something like that. But everything's on the table. We really listen to what the players want. The pool game was the number one most requested game by our players. You guys haven't played it yet?
No, we have played it.
Oh, definitely played it.
We just haven't done the full review of it yet. Our listeners who listen routinely and, they're part of our Discord community, they'll hear us joke a lot about our whiteboard of
our backlog.
Yeah, the backlog is real. So it's a game we've played. We haven't pumped out a review yet, but you know what? It's actually another great example of I'm glad we waited to review, because it's not that it was bad at release or anything, but you look at how it is today versus how it was at release. There's been updates, there's improvements, and it's overall just much more polished. So
then I'm glad you waited, because we just added 9-ball, which was the big one that the players wanted, and we made some adjustments so that players could adjust the table height and things like that. And yeah, we really try and take care of our players as best we can.
I've actually been loving watching the growth of the whole company from the first game you've done to where it's actually going right now since we discovered it.
Oh no, we kind of already came to that conclusion a while ago. We're like, they're pretty much just going to dominate the entire, niche sports. They probably got a whole whiteboard in the back.
Hitting them all off.
Yeah, throwing darts pretty much at them.
Yeah.
No pun intended, because they have the dart game, but they're probably just checking them off one by one. But it also does sound like you're very flexible as a studio. You gave some shout outs to the Grill Tag developer. It sounds like you're very open-minded about the way the market goes. But you definitely have the foundation that if you want to stick with niche sports, you can pretty much take this a template and apply it to anything. And, earlier in the intro, you'd kind of talked a little bit about accessibility and it being a big thing about, making sure that it's an accessible experience for an 80-year-old.
For everybody.
Yeah, for everybody. You're not going to get nausea. You're not going to get sick. So is that a big focus for the studio at ForeVR Games with all the games they make, so that, you can throw anybody into the game?
Yeah, I mean, accessibility, playability by players of all ages and abilities is really important to us. And I think that in VR in particular, I mean, look, I've been gaming for a long time, and it's like anytime there's a new controller that I have to learn, it's like, oh boy, here we go. And then you add into it VR, and suddenly I can't see the buttons, I can't see my thumbs, right? And so, our games have, they use one or two buttons at most to play, and that's a foundation of the design. Before I started ForeVR, I worked at Zynga for many years, and we made games that you could play with one hand while you talked on the phone. And so you kind of come up with these design principles early on in the company, and so our games, our social games, our games have one or max two buttons needed to play, and that's just foundation. And we don't release a game until we can figure out how to do that.
Oh, that's really cool. I mean, as you're talking, I trying to think of anything I played that didn't actually feel like I had to relearn something. It felt pretty natural.
Yeah, that's definitely a strong part for them. And, coming from mobile gaming, with your previous work, what's it like making VR games in comparison to, like you said, making games that, you're going to play on your phone with one hand while you're doing kind of something else and semi-distracted and all that?
That was really the big appeal to me on why VR. Was there were a couple of things. One is it felt like, there's something like 1 million apps launched a year for mobile now. And it feels like creating a mobile game is a bit like putting a grain of sand on the beach and hoping 1 million people find it every day. And that didn't really excite me, but the opportunity to help define a genre, like what is sports in VR? Like what is that experience? That was really exciting to me. The opportunity to make games that were completely immersive after making games that you play with, one hand while you're talking on the phone. That challenge was really appealing to me. I wanted to see if I could do it. Because a lot of the games we made at Zynga were like other games. Like we were like, oh, okay, that's working over there. Let's do it over here. Let's test it 5 different ways. And you don't get to do that in VR. You commit, you work, and then you have some time to iterate after launch in response to player feedback. But you can't sort of soft launch a game in another market. So most mobile games, people release them in Australia or the Philippines for a couple of months before they make it to the US. You don't get to do that in VR. It needs to be very buttoned up and very, very polished. So it's an interesting challenge, and it's a great space to be in, and especially the opportunity to be early.
No, definitely a leader. And like, I don't mean to toot you. Yeah, I don't mean to like toot your horn or anything, but at the start of the interview, you reference, the small guys in VR, but it's funny from my perspective as a consumer and, in my position as a podcaster in VR, when I hear ForeVR games or ForeVR games, as you might say later, it's one of those studios that I might actually consider more of like the AAA studios.
Oh my God, yeah.
In VR, several major titles on the official MetaQuest store. It's funny from your perspective, you're one of the small guys, but from mine, you're one of the bigger OGs,
Yeah, it's just also early, guys. You'll see, there's if you look at the games, our games will make it into the top 50 for a while, and then they'll drop out. We do a lot of sales and promotions. We want to have a lot of value for players, so there's lots of bundles and things like that. But if you look at there's a big difference between a game that's in the top 10 and how much money it makes, and a game that's number 40 or something. So we're trying to create a lot of value and create games at quality at a reasonable clip, at a good speed, and hopefully we continue to find audience.
Definitely worth noting that none of these games are going to cost you an arm and a leg.
No, they're all very reasonably priced,
Uh-huh.
Especially off the top of my head. I think that there's some that are like more expensive and cheaper than the others. Like, I think Cornhole is a little cheaper, correct?
I think Cornhole.
$9.99.
Darts is $9.99.
That's right.
Cornhole's $14.99, I believe.
That's right.
But it's interesting. Cornhole, it's sort of a sleeper hit. People really love Cornhole.
Yeah,
It's our highest rated game. It's got a 4.7 stars, and it's a VR audience are very particular. And we get someone will say 4 stars. I don't feel the weight of the bowling ball. It's like, right, because it's called virtual reality, not reality. And so
funny.
it's one of these things where you can't make everybody happy, but with Cornhole, everyone who plays it, they really love it.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I can't really go to a brewery around me and not see people playing cornhole. And
dude, everybody loves it.
yeah, it's like pretty much every brewery around me, they're like family friendly, and there's always a cornhole set up, and there's
even ice cream shops.
Yeah.
Love the cornhole. Yeah.
So it's like, it's at least in our area. I don't know if it's like that, nationwide and worldwide, but at least in the Northeast, cornhole is pretty big at like the brewery scene. So I'm not surprised at all that it's a sleeper.
I'll take it. There's actually a real world. There's the American Cornhole Association, and then there's the American Cornhole Organization. And we basically launched with a promo with the American Cornhole Organization, and they're terrific group of guys, and they do these events around the country.
Yeah, we actually have quite a bit of UK players who are in our Discord, and UK listeners, and they had a little bit of laugh at the name cornhole when it first came out, because I guess that's a little bit of a United States only term. I didn't know that, but they were like, I was like, you guys never heard of a cornhole? They're like, oh, I think we got maybe a different name for that. So kind of going back to the challenges of VR, all of your games are very physics based. The physics are essential in all of your games, whether it's darts, pool, bowling. It's all about the physics. So what were kind of some of the challenges in developing kind of quote unquote virtual physics? Because like I said before, in all of your games, it's all about the physics.
It's really interesting. When we first started, our first game was bowling, ForeVR Bowl, and we started off. We said, okay, we got to make the most realistic sim possible. And we had professional bowlers who were testing it out, and it was spot on when we launched it. I mean, in real life, I'm a terrible bowler. If I break 100, it's amazing, and that's how it was in ForeVR Bowl. And then we launched, and it turns out that players want to be very good at a video game, and so basically now we launch everything. We start with that fundamental: is this a really great sim? And then we're like, okay, well, now that we've set that's the hard mode. And then we add in corrections. So there's easy, medium, and hard. And then we let players choose. And so we did that because we saw, there's another bowling title out there, Premium Bowling, and people love to throw in Premium Bowling. But in that game, you could basically throw the ball over your shoulder and get a strike. And so, we basically were like, okay, we can't make it that easy in our easy mode. But yeah, so we have, easy, medium, and hard mode in all of our games, but it starts off with let's nail that real sim.
I think out of all the games, the bowling's definitely been my favorite.
Yeah, well, when you look at like one of the core elements that's so huge in all the ForeVR games, which is like purchasing and unlocking things, and you go and you have all the different bowling balls to unlock, all the different stats. I feel like it worked really good, especially in bowling.
I love that game. That one's our first one. It'll always be very special to me. I think the pool game is really a lot of fun. Having a pool table kind of in my house, having the ability to do that is really cool. You have to adjust to there's no table to lean on, so that was a really interesting physics challenge. Like we didn't want people to be leaning on the table all in their face, and so then we kind of created this system where you lock on the ball, and then you're kind of on the table and you shoot. And some people have said, "Oh, why did you do that?" It's like, hey, come on. We didn't want you to fall on your face. That's why we did it that way. I don't know how else we could have done it. We tried to do it every possible way, and that was the way where no one fell on their face.
Well, I could totally see that happening, because that's definitely an area that you guys excel in. It's like you load in, and it's an immersive environment. You have the meta avatars all over the place, the nice scenery all around you, whatever the environment that you're playing in is, for that particular one. And then, you have like the bar, you have the dance floor. So I could totally see after like 20 minutes of playing, somebody goes to lean on the bar.
Or they'll lean over the pool table, get all confident.
Yeah, 100%. So I could totally see that. But, kind of going back to just to jump around a bit, going back to you being, flexible with the market and kind of being open-minded, nowhere in the name ForeVR Games does it say ForeVR Sports Games.
Mm-hmm.
So are you, sticking forever to sport games? You kind of open to expanding to different genres?
I'll say this. I have something that we're cooking right now that is targeting a younger demo. And I cannot tell you much more now.
Hmm.
But I would love to invite both of you to play it as it gets closer, and we'd love to get your feedback on it.
Oh no, definitely, and I can definitely tell like you're inspired by experiences like you reference Gorilla Tag and Gym Class VR. Those are two definitely multiplayer
Social.
social VR
Yeah.
heavy experiences. Definitely, so definitely you're looking at all the influences and popular experiences in VR around you for influence. So I'm definitely excited to check out whatever that social experience that
The
you're working on
mystery.
is. Yeah.
I've got social games really in my DNA. That was what we did at Zynga, and that's what I know. That's sort of where my product thinking always lies. And VR, it's still building its audience, and so basically, how much social can happen between strangers and have it still be fun and a safe environment and things like that, and solving for some of those challenges is really important. When I go into Gorilla Tag, it's like, okay, I'm just going to turn the volume off.
That's always
Because I don't want to hear this. I don't want this in my life.
that's a rec room problem as well, unfortunately.
So when you think we're sort of talking about the M word before the metaverse, and it's like, how do I build metaverse products? If you take the definition as using software to bring people together, right? So to me, using software to bring people together and have them playing, that's like my purpose here. And to have them feel safe and have it be super fun and have it be really high quality, like that's what it's all about. I want to build metaverse that doesn't suck. And to me, that means, that there's controls and things like that, so that if someone's out of hand, you can basically be like, boop, I don't want to hear you anymore. Um, and if you're sort of, you shouldn't have to deal with that person again, right? So there's some things I think that the industry should pay attention to and make sure that we build that foundation so that as many people can enjoy the metaverse or connected products as possible. If you don't want to use the M word.
I think it's really important in like social games to be able to limit the amount of toxicity that exists, no matter how little or how strong it might be. But we were just talking a couple hours ago about companies starting to use AI
Yeah.
for moderation.
Like Among Us, they were talking
Yeah.
about doing an AI moderating tool.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, because it's like, look, if you say, "Oh, my game's not that toxic," 70% of the time it's good, but 30% of the time you might get,
Hated really
Pandora's
bad.
box of
Yeah.
wildness. That might not be a problem for the player that's already survived, the storm, and they're gonna keep coming back. But if it's your first time going in,
Could be a turnoff.
yeah, and you get one of those 30% bad times, you might not never go back. And we've even heard that in our Discord from people before. Like, no, I went in, I had a bad experience, and screw that. There's 1,000 other games to play. I don't need to deal with that. So when it's your product, when it's your game, you have to be confident that no, this is a community that's non-toxic, and at the very least, we have the proper moderation tools to make people feel
deal with it,
comfortable.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and in our games, for instance, the community, on our Discord, they'll get together and organize game nights and things like that. There's like a women's only bowling league, and we have a high percentage of female players, and we want that. Like we're happy about that. I think that as players, though, part of our responsibility is we could say, okay, there's jerks everywhere, right? Here are the tools that I can say, hey, I'm not tolerating this behavior. And it could be that that person actually needs to be told.
Hmm.
You know, it's one of these things where if I, just mute somebody, maybe that's not enough. If I'm reporting them, then I feel like maybe that's too aggressive. If I could just say, hey, you know, I'm muting you, please follow these rules. I think that as players, we could take some responsibility too to set boundaries without having it be a big disaster in our lives. I don't think we can really expect to walk around in the world and never be offended by anything that we hear,
Hmm.
you know. And we're seeing a lot of that now, where there's a lot of we all no one. I believe in that fundamentally people are good and they don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But sometimes a kid gets in the headset and they're like, you know, mom and dad aren't around. I'm going to just freak out. And just saying, hey, kid, you're ruining my game experience. It doesn't have to be that big of a deal, but trust and safety are important to our company. So we just want to build those tools in.
I think it's cool because none of the games even seem to like want to foster you being violent in them.
No, in a bowling alley or
I mean, in darts, I threw a dart at you and it did stick.
well, I mean, you always got to do at
Actually,
least
the
that.
first thing I did was throw a dart at you.
It is funny though. No, it does stick in your.
But yeah, nothing really compels you to want to be like all rampage playing these games.
No, not at all. So something I'm dying to know, because we love to ask this, is, how big is the studio working on this? Typically, we're here, 10 to 30 is kind of on the big side of bigger side, at least, of a VR studio.
Actually, I'm going to cut you off real quick. What I want to know is how big was it when you started versus how big is it grown since you started?
Oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, basically we're at around 25 people now, and we've scaled up and scaled down depending on what it is we have going on. And I think it's still too early for VR to have a really big studio unless you're Resolution and you're cranking. And those guys are multi-platform. And so we are VR first, and so we're putting out more games and bringing them to other platforms and things like that, like bringing our existing games to other places where people plug in their VR headset. So we'll be on Steam and Sony this year.
Nice. And so I totally understand if it's a little too early to speak on this, but does that mean a revamping of the avatar system as well? Or does that mean, if it's on Meta, it stays with the Meta avatars, then the other ones have
Taking
a different...
it with me.
Yeah, because I love the Meta avatars personally.
A little too soon to tell. I think we're trying to work through all of those. The most important thing is preserving the gameplay experience. And, for us, what's been great about the relationship with Meta is that they did create an avatar system and we were able to use that thing. And that allowed us to put, we shipped bowling and darts in the same year. And we are able to, basically take these systems we create, like a leaderboard or a lobby or a store, and we are able to kind of repurpose that code and then have that unified experience across the titles. And so that's been a great benefit to us. But I look at the other avatar systems that are out there and what other developers have done, and I'm very inspired. I mentioned the gym class guys because I'm a big fan. But their avatar system's pretty great. And so, it's one of these things where as we evolve as a company, what we'll continue to do, it's all about, that player experience. What will the players thank us for?
Well, not to be like a little pest in your brain and be a little annoying, but I will say I'm pretty complimentary of, your integration of the Meta avatars. We often talk about it. We love it. When I roll into a game, whether it's this game or Drop Dead the Cabin, and I see the Meta avatar integration, I always love it. So it's definitely something that, I selfishly hope you guys keep.
I think that what we're experiencing with this audience, though, the early VR adopters they were a little bit kinder. They were sort of like, oh, okay, we're all in this kind of cottage industry together, and we're building up to something great. And it's like, oh, okay, these avatars, the heads are a little round, and people were, oh, there's no legs, but they were like, okay, we're all in it together, and this is this investment, and it's got to start somewhere. And I think that the audience has changed a bit. That when you get to I don't know how many they've sold, how many headsets they've sold. I've seen reports as high as 20 million, that you have a different audience. And some of them are expecting, they don't understand why there aren't legs. And they're not very tolerant about things that they expect to be there based on their experience in other consoles. And so, for those of us, like for the three of us, we've seen the improvements in the avatars. We've seen that how well the mouth moves now compared to 2 years ago, and it's like, wow, these guys are really moving the product along. But if you're new to it, all you sort of have are expectations. So,
no, I guess that is an interesting point of view. I think we may have become a little seasoned to
the avatars.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I do remember when we got our Quest 2 back in the day. We didn't go into to it with some huge expectation that it was going to be lifelike or anything like that. We were blown away with what was available, but maybe the new user is a little bit higher expectation based off of word of mouth.
The hype.
Totally. I mean, roller coaster. The first time I rode a roller coaster on the original Quest that I got on Kickstarter, I was like, I can't even believe this thing. And it was tethered to my computer, and I've just been tracking this for a long time. And so every bit of evolution, I feel like I'm here early and I'm into it. But if you're competing against a PlayStation 5 and you got this thing for Christmas and you put it on, you're like, where are my legs? Legs is a hard problem in VR.
Yeah, nobody's really solved the legs problem, or at least very few have. You'll see it sometimes in shooters like Contractors or Breachers.
See him running.
Breachers has full body,
but you got to look at other people to see the full body.
Yeah, it's
you can't
not
see your own. I'm not complaining though.
No, it's on your view. It's folding hands, which I actually think is really smart. But definitely legs and full body is an issue, very prevalent amongst VR development.
So
when someone talks in the Meta avatar system, and most of the time it tracks really well, and that's a pretty cool experience, and it adds a level of presence that makes the social better. So yeah, I'm excited about the ongoing commitment that Meta has. I mean, they're investing a lot of money in this.
Well, I remember the first time that we were in a home environment, well, the shared home environment together, and like the hand tracking for the avatars had just rolled out. So, we had to try it out, and we put down the controllers, and, first things first, I give a peace sign, and then next thing I know, you flip me off with your guy, and I don't think I've ever laughed so hard.
I couldn't believe it worked.
Well, it's not just
worked
that
perfectly.
I was going to say, it's not just that it worked, it tracked so good. It looks so realistic with your little Meta avatar fingers.
Yeah.
It's just sticking up like that. So I found that moment hilarious. And like, dude, it's only going to keep getting better and better.
I think what's exciting is, I assume you guys have seen Minority Report, and we have this idea, these glasses get put on and suddenly you're working like this, and the future of work, instead of being hunched over a laptop like I am right now, you got these glasses on and you're grabbing objects and you're speaking and it's all happening, right? And it's like, I want that very much, but that's not going to happen without me and millions of people like us banging on hardware and software for many, many years before we get to that reality, right? And so it's like, we are part of making that happen. It's not going to come out of the box that way.
Well, hey, listeners who listen a bunch, they know we usually record on weekends, so
steal people at the most inconvenient times.
Yeah, we're terrible. Not only do we take these developers who are working incredibly hard, improving their game, making new games.
What you get for free time.
Yeah, then we take them on a Sunday.
Yeah.
For X amount of time. So definitely we appreciate the time that you've given us. And but something I gotta ask before we let you go is, what's something that you think it takes for the industry to keep growing, and making it something that's more accessible and sustainable with retention and user growth and everything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things. One is that I think that Meta and whoever wants to sell headsets, they need to do way more experiential marketing. You need to be able to go into a mall, go to a movie theater. There needs to be a booth, and you need to try this thing on, because 99.99999% of the people who experience VR for the first time think, wow, I got to get a hold of one of those. And, at these price points we have now, like $300 to $400, with some games that come with it, it's like, it's never been a better deal for VR than now. We have a new headset coming out, supposedly a few new headsets coming out. And where are they? How can people try before they buy? If you go into Best Buy, there's a tiny little end cap and they have the Status Pro football game showing on a video. That's not the same. I need to put that thing on. So I think way more experiential marketing. I would love to see, there's some great companies. There's a company called Transfer that does EdTech. And they do these amazing courses that they're using in high schools and community colleges where people can learn auto shop and stuff like that. And, more VR in schools and things like that to help propel this and have it gain widespread acceptance, I think would be really great. And I also think really spreading that fitness story. These fitness apps are amazing opportunities for people of all ages and abilities to have a gym wherever they go. And be in better shape in as little as 10 or 15 minutes a day. So I think more use cases, commercials that show broad demos of people using it, people playing together, family game nights. I mean, I think what you guys do is so cool. You know, a father and son podcast, like that's amazing. And so these kinds of stories, like that'll help broaden the audience. But I think more people having the experiences is key.
It's like there's so much great about VR, and I see a lot of commercials and advertisements kind of focused on what's going to be going on in 10 years versus, what's actually great about it today.
You know, I've yet to see a commercial that really encapsulates that whole true emotional feeling that people are getting when
Playing across the country.
Yeah,
Different countries, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, when they can really harness that
Emotional touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be a good
commercial.
Yeah, but focusing a little bit on what's yet to be here, and instead of focusing on the great experiences like ForeVR VR that actually do encapsulate that feeling, that it's part of what makes VR so great.
Yeah, the togetherness.
And this really applies for like any social game, walkabout mini golf, your games, even a game like Population One. We'll mention that because, we've gone pretty ham on it, and we've met a lot of people that, they play long distance with their friends and family. So
There's some stuff that always works, that worked in web, it worked in mobile, and we're not yet able to do it as developers in a very easy way. So for instance, if, you know, if I could send, if I could send both of you guys a limited edition bowling ball, you haven't played in a while, and it's like, hey, send 5 friends this bowling ball. And I could choose from my friend list, and I could just boom, and you would get a notif. That would work. If I passed one of you, if you guys are level 100 and I get to level 101, and it's like your friend Marcus just passed you.
That'll get you. I know that.
This kind of stuff, it always works. It was bread and butter at Zynga, and we're not able to do it in VR yet. And when we are able to do that, the smart developers will make good use of it. And the Population One team does a great job of really maximizing social and getting you to import like all of your friends in. And they're a great model. And I think we'll see developers continue to innovate, but giving us that stuff that we had in the mobile days and we had in the web days, and giving us those kind of communications abilities within the meta system, that's going to be really key for engagement. So I think we have reach, retention, and revenue are kind of the 3 R's of game making: reach, retention, and revenue. And sometimes with free to play games, reach comes before revenue. And those free to play games are like, we just got to get more users, and whether they come back or not, I don't know. Some percentage of them will spend money. We've been selling games, so we need to have reach and revenue at the same time. That's the way to keep the lights on. So, I think as developers like evolve their thinking about how to keep players coming back, that VR will benefit. I think that there is an engagement problem. People kind of get the headset and they forget about it after 6 months, and we need to solve for that in a big way.
I think you guys are doing a great job with the replayability aspect of it all.
I mean, yeah, people do like social nights and game nights, and this would be a great one to do as like a Discord meetup in our Discord as well. And you also have the brain and ideas of things to do for retention, but the software, the developer tools aren't exactly there yet, which I imagine, must be a little frustrating. You have the idea, but there's not the ability for you to do it on the developer end yet.
Well, they're pretty receptive. They're a pretty receptive team, and we have meetings with them, and they're like, "What do you need?" And I tell them, and sometimes we get some of the things we want, and I try and get the other developers to say the same thing.
And something you had said about like trying VR, when we went when we did our coverage of PAX East and we were out there on the ground doing a bunch of interviews and stuff like that, there's probably only about like 6 or 7 VR booths there. Unfortunately, GDC was at the same time and seemingly stole a lot of the VR scene, but the VR scene that was there, including like Resolution Games, Peaky Blinders, like I said, a small little indie development team making Pin City, still in its alpha stage even, and everybody who tried the VR at those booths, they walked away freaking loving it.
Yeah.
Like I think if Meta had a booth there and they were trying, having people try out experiences, like, man, you should have seen the line outside like Demio's booth.
I was at GDC, same thing. Like those guys are killing it. they're a really great team. Tommy and his team are fantastic developers. They're great for the ecosystem. So yeah, you think they were big at PAX East? You should the GDC. They were on every bus stop in San Francisco.
No, yeah, but I definitely think if, Meta had a booth at PAX, besides the individual developers showing off their games, which were all well received, everybody that played them, they were leaving saying positive things. If Meta had a booth with like 20 headsets and hand-selected experiences,
you'd see all those boxes being sold.
Yeah, they would have sold them like hotcakes, and I think it would have given a very huge reception to VR. I think a lot of people were open, willing, and wanting to try VR. There just wasn't enough of it.
I think VR is so good that it should be flying off the shelves and big pallets of it at Costco and the whole thing. But it's just going to take a while to get there. It's outselling the Xbox from what I heard, which is pretty cool. But a typical, if you go back 30 years and look at consoles, they have a 7-year cycle. And like a Xbox or a PlayStation will sell, 90 to 110 million units in a 7-year cycle. But we've got these devices coming out every 2 years. And so it's exciting, the rapid pace of development of the headsets. But, it's going to take a while for it to get to that level of density where there's, 70 to 90 million people with a headset. Like that's going to take a minute.
I think it's definitely going to happen. I mean, every single time there's a new headset that's going to come out, there's going to be some sort of improvement. It might even be just a little ounce of extra power, but I think the developers are going to be all over it to squeeze as much as they can out of it.
Yeah, based off of what I've seen, if you give developers an inch, they take a mile in terms of,
what they're able to do
on a headset. Absolutely. Yeah. So no, I definitely think we could easily keep talking for another 2 hours. There. Yeah, but like we referenced earlier, Sunday.
I'd love to, invite me back anytime. I'm big fan, and getting to catch up with you guys is really cool.
No, I love to hear that. And, I definitely think that this is not the last time we'll have Marcus on. I definitely think we need much more answers. And luckily for us too, I don't think that this is a studio that's going anywhere.
Oh God, no.
I don't think they're stopping releases, and I don't think that this is the last we've heard of Forever Games or ForeVR or however you wanna call them.
To your audience, hey, thank you for playing, and thank you for being a part of our story.
So we'd love to have you back on when the next release is ready. Maybe talk a little bit general VR and philosophy too. We didn't even really get into your background at all, but there's plenty to talk about just with what's available right now with ForeVR. So, there's 1,000 more questions that I have that we didn't get to today, but it also makes room for a good follow-up interview next time. So thank you again for joining us today, Marcus, and have a good one.